files documented extensive FBI operations against U.S. citizens and organizations, including traditional civil rights groups. Amid growing criticism of the counterintelligence program, President Richard Nixon reaffirmed his support for the FBI during graduation ceremonies at the Bureau's National Academy.
I am honored to be here to break into your graduation ceremony, to reassure you and all of the men in law enforcement throughout the country of the support you have at the very highest levels in government for your work. And I am honored to speak for the entire nation in saying to you, congratulations, wishing you well, in seeing that this nation is one in which we will have respect for law, in which the American people can have freedom from fear.
We had talked about police brutality. The Black Panther Party talked about the police as an occupying force in the community, but we had not really understood the extent to which the whole criminal justice system, the police, the courts, the prison system, is very much intertwined with the economic oppression of Black people.
Blacks and Latinos filled the nation's prisons in disproportionate numbers. At Attica Correctional Facility in upstate New York, they comprised more than 60% of the inmate population. Most came from poor inner-city neighborhoods.
I think the system was damaging to the people that came in. The only inspiration anybody could have not to go back or desire not to go back to a place like that is because of what a horrible place it was.
There's always the tendency to push prisons to the fringes of our awareness so that we don't have to deal with what happens inside of these horrifying institutions.
Conditions in 1971 before the rebellion was bad. You know, bad food, bad educational programs, very, very low wages. We were called slave wages. You know, myself, I was working in laundry, and I was making like 30 cents a day, being the warden's laundry boy, and that was the title that you had with my job, warden's boy, and I'm far from a boy.
We always thought of the jails as a kind of explosive resource for, revolutionary change. Certainly people like Malcolm X had come out of prison, and the Nation of Islam had done a great job of transforming a lot of people who had been in prison. And some people in prison had, been in the Panthers and things like that. So we saw revolutionary activity as a means of transforming prisoners into revolutionaries.
One of the most impassioned voices to emerge was George Jackson's. His published letters from prison had reached a wide audience. On August 21st, 1971, Jackson was shot to death in San Quentin Prison in California. At Attica, the news of his death greatly affected the inmates.
When it really hit me, it's going to breakfast that morning. Everybody was quiet. Nobody wasn't picking up no silverware. You know, when you go in the dining room in the mess hall, you had to pick up a knife, spoon, and fork. And when you come out, you had to have that. Nobody was picking up. Nobody was talking.
I don't know that I can describe in words how it affected me, because George was, in effect, my mentor. I remember his going to court in shackles, and the brother would stand erect, proud black man that he was. And they had not broken his spirit. And these are the things that Dr. King and Malcolm talked about, the breaking down of the black man's spirit.
3 weeks later, a fight between inmates and guards at Attica sparked a prison-wide uprising. Violence swept through the institution.
An estimated 1,000 prisoners took over 4 cell blocks at Attica State Prison about 9:30 this morning.
The general chaos was such that even I was taken aback, because you had 40 or 50 correction officers who no longer, it appeared, had control of the institution. So order had to be made out of this disorder. And at that point, the Muslim contingent in the yard, I think there were 35 Muslim brothers, saw to it that there was no further injuries to the hostages.
The newly established inmate leadership released 11 injured guards, but still held hostage 39 prison employees. Commissioner of Corrections Russell Oswald agreed to negotiate. Accompanied by advisors and a local television crew, he entered the yard where 1,200 inmates were in control.
Take it as we walk. Take it as you walk. Take it as you walk. Make sure you get that roof open. Take it as you walk.
The news team was permitted to talk to the hostages.
Been treated all right?
Yes, I have so far been treated very good.
No complaints, but no problem.
The meeting with Commissioner Oswald quickly focused on inmate fear of reprisals for the rebellion.
The fact now that the sheriff's department, the various counties, and the state troopers has taken over because it has been declared now a state of emergency. You couldn't guarantee no reprisal anyway. This is now out of your hands, isn't it, Commissioner?
No, it is not.
You still control the state troopers?
Absolutely.
All right, now, you want to put your no reprisals in writing?
Yes.
Would you start doing that?
I talked as rationally as I could with them and listened to them for some period of time. And ultimately, they said they had an agenda of what they wanted. And I said, well, give me the agenda.
The agenda included demands for improved conditions. The inmates called for educational programs, an end to censorship of letters and magazines, adequate health care, and hiring of black and Spanish-speaking guards. Distrustful of state officials, the inmates also asked for outsiders to observe negotiations.
Arthur Eve of Buffalo, the Prison Solidarity Committee of New York, Minister Farrakhan from the Muslims. We want Huey P. Newton from the Black Panther Party, and we want the chairman of the Young Lords
In
Party.
all, the inmates requested 13 observers.
I felt good. You know, I felt relieved. I felt, I guess, liberated. You know, that I didn't have to worry about the bar in the front of me, even though I knew that I felt and knew that I was in prison. Now, that's the reality. But that visible thing wasn't there no more. You know, the walls was there, but that bar wasn't really in the front of me, that visible bar. It was more invisible then.
Wait until you get the cue. Come on, it's on now. All of us here realize that wherever there's struggle, there's sacrifice.
The next morning, Commissioner Oswald returned to the yard, still seeking a negotiated solution to the crisis.
I talked with the governor's legal counsel yesterday, and he told me the same as Mr. Schwartz told me, and that is that the governor nor no one else has the power to grant amnesty for the commission of a crime, and that's the falls within the purview of the local law enforcement authorities.
Mr. Oswald, now, you and I know that's a lie.
Amnesty was very important to the inmates because it, to a great degree, would determine what happened to them after the state took over, or whether or not there was going to be a peaceful kind of takeover, and subsequently how they would be treated.
The talks had reached an impasse. Tensions in the yard increased.
We have been asking for over 29 hours for food and water. We haven't got none. We're going to keep Mr. Russell G. Oswald here until we get the food and water.
As soon as I get back there, the food is brought into this yard.
Protected by the inmate security force, Commissioner Oswald left the yard. The hopes of both sides now rested on the outside observers who arrived in Attica later that day.
We were led down a long corridor which had been trashed and burned out in the initial rioting. I mean, the first feeling of shock, I think, for sort of a sedentary middle-class person like me was the feeling of being out of reach of the law that one ordinarily thinks protects you, you know, that sort of protection we all take for granted until you don't have it. And all of a sudden I realized that there wasn't anything in there to protect me except these other inmates, whom it's all too easy to think of, you know, as murderers and thieves and so forth. And that is a somewhat scary feeling, there's no question. But very shortly after that, we all got down to business of trying to, you know, work out the problems there. The inmate leaders got into some very fervid oratory. They were great orators.
We are men. We are not beasts, and we do not intend to be driven or beaten as such. The entire prison populace has set forth to change forever the ruthless brutalization and disregard for the lives of the prisoners here and throughout the United States. What has happened here